Tax Credit Allocation Committee. Apologize for the slight delay in getting started. To start us off, why don't we have the phone instructions read by Mr. Zito?
Yes, actually, if you were participating in the CTCAC meeting, you would know that we're having technical difficulties. We ask that you have your phone on mute, and then if you had questions or comments following the meeting, you could email them to TCAC docs, DOCS, @treasurer.ca.gov. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And if you are on the phone, please be sure to have your phone on mute so that we don't get interference from your conversations.
And do not put us on hold.
And do not put us on hold. Thank you. Secretary, can you please call the roll?
Yes. Giovanna G. for State Treasurer, Fiona Ma.
Present.
Anthony Sertich for State Controller, Betty Yee.
Here.
Gail Miller for Department of Finance Director, Keely Martin Bossler.
Here.
Housing Finance Agency Director, Tia Boatman Patterson.
Here.
Zachary Olmstead for Acting Housing and Community Development Director, Doug McCulley.
Here.
And City Representative Vivian Marino, absent.
All right, thank you. Here's we have a quorum. Moving on to agenda item number 2, approval of the minutes from our December 11th meeting. Motion.
Move to approve.
All right. We have a motion, a second. Do we have any questions or comments from the public in regards to the minutes? All right, seeing none, please call the roll.
Okay. Gail Miller.
Aye.
Anthony Sertich.
Aye.
Tia Boatman Patterson.
Aye.
Zachary Olmstead.
Aye.
Giovanna G.
Aye. The motion has been approved. Moving on to agenda item number 3, Executive Director's Report. Ms. Blackwell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning. Good afternoon.
Hawaii, that's
Not even there anymore.
They're not even there anymore, yeah.
These meetings move so quickly, it throws me off. Okay, so anyway, thank you. And I just want to have a few little brief statements to kind of put into context all of the great things that have been going on over the past 5 or 6 months. Let me first point out that Larry and I arrived here at the state on August 12th, 2019, that our positions were vacant for 8 months, and that in this past few months since August 12th, we've been able to do several things. We've created new regulations to establish and implement the new state tax credit program. We've developed a joint application. We've streamlined the Tcat regs, streamlined operations and procedures, and we've worked with CTCAC through an oversubscribed December allocation round to help create emergency regs in anticipation of 2020 being a competitive year for the bonds. As you all already know, AB 101 was signed into law on July 31st, 2019, which was exactly 12 days before we arrived. At that time, no one in the housing world recognized that at the time the legislation was created, the provisions requiring Tcat to rank order applications based on credits per unit if a round is oversubscribed would cause a conflict with the CTCAC scoring if the bond round is competitive. These challenges, of course, were even further compounded by the Treasurer's strong desire for us to meet the Governor and the Legislature's expectation that we get this first round out of credits out quickly, and we're doing that today. Thank you for your continued support and for recognizing that we inherited these challenges and did not create them. Under the circumstances, TCAC and CTCAC have stood side by side for the last 6 months trying to resolve these issues in a manner that is both equitable and above all transparent. I'm happy to announce that even under these circumstances, we are already seeing a great deal of success in tackling our goal of increasing the rate of funding for additional housing units. I'm proud to announce that as of the end of 2019, we saw a 30% increase in the amount of units that we put on, that we funded. And I know that's hard to believe, so let me give you some numbers. In 2017, we funded 11,168 units. In 2018, we funded 15,480 units. And as of December, we funded in 2019, 21,311 financed units. So I'm very happy about that progress. And in addition, I want to also point out that our first round of the state tax credits has been met with market enthusiasm. On our November 15th deadline, we received 58 applications. 53 of them were for the state tax credits and were new construction, and we had 5 ACC rehabs. So in total, given that we were only making $150 million available for this round, we had state tax credits requested of $352 million. I find that a resounding success. So we will be going through our agenda today to show you and talking about accepting these, our preliminary reservations. But I just wanted to let you know how well things have been going thus far for the program. I also wanted to point out that 2020 is going to be a huge year for us. I underscored the increase that we experienced in 2019, and 2019 did not reflect the new monies that we've received. In 2020, we will be looking at a completely different landscape. As you know, traditionally, our 9% tax credits that we receive every year is in the approximate 100 million range, and the state tax credits are in the approximate 100 million range. In 2020, we will be in a brave new world. We will be looking at $200 million of 9% tax credits, and we will be looking at $600 million of state tax credits. So fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be a remarkable year. Where did the extra $100 million and 9% come from? I know that most of you in this room track federal developments very closely, but for those of you who don't, we received an additional one-time $1 billion allocation of tax credits to address disaster relief. This came from the federal government, and it was passed on December 20th, so it is brand new. This is based on the fact that California had, well, nationwide there have been disasters, so this was a disaster relief piece of legislation. It's called it's part of the Further Consolidated Appropriations Act 2020, HR 1865, and the feds did a calculation based on the number of counties in each state that had disasters. Well, the majority of counties in California in 2017 and 28 had disasters. There were only 6 that did not: Fresno, Imperial, Madera, San Bernardino, and San Francisco and Tulare. So based on the calculations in that piece of legislation, we're receiving, I'm just rounding now, but we're receiving approximately another $100 million. So the question becomes, what are we going to do with this extra money? And I said $100 million annually, total of $1 billion. So what are the suggestions? Well, we already do, the legislation does not require us to only spend the money in the disaster areas, but as noted, most of California had disasters anyway. So what I'm suggesting is that we spend the money on the disaster that's currently facing all Californians, and that is on homelessness. I want to emphasize that there are many things that we already do to cover areas that have disasters. For example, if you had a project that was actively under construction when the disaster occurred, for the 4% tax credits, we don't have time for them. We don't have a limit on the time that they need to do reconstruction. And for the 9% credits, we give them an extension of 1 year for any delays due to damage by fire, war, or act of God. For any projects within the 15-year credit period, we also allow a 1-year construction period for anything of that nature. So, as I said, we're already accommodating the exact cases of new disasters. So I am proposing that with this new $100 million, we focus on what we can do in 2020 to house as much of our homeless population and to encourage any projects that are helping to take people off the streets and bring them indoors. I propose that the first $50 million of this $100 million be added to our current permanent supportive housing for homeless program. The reason I'm choosing this number is because we looked at the pent-up demand that we saw in 2017, 2018, and 2019, and based on what we've seen historically, we project that the market can absorb another $50 million worth of tax credits to build housing for homeless or housing that's mixed and has at least 25% homeless. For the other $50 million, I'm proposing that we include any types of projects that we're not currently addressing that we believe will help this population. One type that we stopped funding in the past that I'm suggesting we re-include is SROs. In addition, there are many other things that will help the homeless population, and I am not going to presume to be the one that knows everything here. I'm asking, I'm putting out a request to the homeless, to the housing community. Let us know what you think. We're going to pull this together very quickly, so contact my office, contact my staff, give us your thoughts on what you think will be useful. But that is my suggestion. And with regard to those monies, I also believe that we've had a lot of ideas in our office about how to streamline our scoring system and our incentive system, and I believe that we should take our best thoughts and put them on this small pilot, and then we can take a look in September when it's time to do our regs again and see how it worked, and if it worked, then we'll implement it. So those are my thoughts for my executive director speech, and thank you all once again for your continued support and for recognizing the challenges that we're working with. Thank you.
Okay, any comments from our board members? Comments from board members? Yes?
I just want to thank staff for, first of all, working so hard, but thinking through and having a thoughtful proposal on what to do with the new $100 million. I think that's great. Do you have timing on when is it planned to come back in March and revisit that as more of an action item? Allocation?
No, thank you for asking me that. No, we're going to probably be trying to set up, once we have it set up, we are going to try to ask for a special meeting, probably late February, to pass that. Yeah. And the most important thing, which I should have talked about in the beginning, is to thank my staff for the remarkable job that they have done over this difficult year, or at least the half a year that I've been here. I kind of think it's been hard all year, but thank you. They've been working flat out, and not having Christmas to get this state tax credit process in place and to get these applications reviewed. And just thank you very much.
All right, no comments from board members. Any members of the public wishing to make a comment? Are there people on the phone now, or are the phones working? Not working? Still not working. Okay, we'll move on then.
The phones are working.
Oh, phones are working. Anybody wishing to make a comment on the phones? No. Oh.
My name is Paul, and my question is on well, it sounds like the $50 million is kind of the SRO, is that what was mentioned, and any other ideas that might come up. Is there an expectation that that $50
any portion of that 50 million for SROs would be available for round one.
We talked about $50 million for permanent supportive housing for homeless, and the other $50 million for SROs and anything else. And so round one starts in early March. So if it's passed in February, if the board passes in February, yeah. I mean, that's a very rapid turnaround. I'm not promising that, but it is possible.
Okay, so just so I just fully understand, okay, so 50 million is for, the second 50 million you mentioned.
Right.
Is that going to be targeted exclusively to, SRO or something very similar? To,
I think it's a catch-all right now, so it's, the first category is permanent supportive housing, the second is pilot program for other, but SROs would be part of it.
Okay, I suppose I'm curious if it's possible that, that some of that would be spread across the board in the normal, and allocated in the normal, manner, to the different set-asides, you know, rural set-aside.
Oh, like rural set-asides, regional, how is it gonna be allocated?
My concern is from a timing standpoint.
For timing, well, I mean, the timing, we're trying to get everything out as quick as possible.
Current planning from a owner's and developer's standpoint,
Yes,
or
so
can be readdressed in February.
we'll address it in February, and
But we want your comments.
yeah, we need comments now, so please send in comments to Judith Blackwell. And then if the board is amenable and approves, then we will be ready to go start rolling out in March.
Okay.
Okay, Tia, thank you.
Staff is fabulous, but that is a very aggressive time frame. And I would caution us to be thoughtful, and if it isn't ready, but to be considerate of, that is a very aggressive time frame.
Can you please mute your phones?
People on the phone, can you please mute your phones?
Thank you, Ms. Boatman Patterson. And I think I think I wasn't clear, and thank you for saying that. The first 50 million for homeless permanent supportive housing, that program already exists. So we're just adding money to that program. We don't have to develop a new program. So that's the piece that I'm saying, once we pull the trigger on that in February, it's clearly
Not the pilot program.
not the pilot.
Okay, so
Yeah,
let's
I'm
clarify on that.
sorry, I
Okay,
wanted to
good.
give you some clarity there. Thank you.
Okay. What's wrong with the phone?
Just a point of clarification, so typically we put them in a queue, and that's the issue with the phone.
Oh.
So everybody basically is live on the phone, and that's why we ask them to mute it, and so we ask them to submit their questions following the meeting.
Okay, so is it our IT system or
The AT&T phone, yeah.
AT&T's fault?
So we have no control.
All right, fine.
So we have no control, that's why
AT&T's fault, okay,
we've
I'm
asked
just
everybody
saying.
to put it on mute.
Okay, if it's our fault, then, you know,
Just okay, it's not okay.
no, okay. We should make sure, like, all right, I'll talk to you guys later. I'll talk to you guys after, okay. All right, item number 4 then. Discussion and consideration of the 2020 applications for reservation of federal 4% low-income housing tax credits for tax-exempt bond finance projects. This is an action item. Who's presenting? Gina?
Sorry.
I know it's late. Everyone's used to having these meetings in the morning.
These are 4 projects that are 4% federal, no state credits, so this is typically the type of project that we would see at this January meeting. Just as a reminder, the earliest they could get tax-exempt bond financing is March, so we're giving them a preliminary reservation at this point, contingent on the tax-exempt bond financing outcome in March. So these 4 projects do not have state credits. Staff has reviewed them, they meet program, federal and state program guidelines, we're recommending them for preliminary reservation contingent upon getting a bond allocation in March.
I have no issues with these projects, but I wonder if the process, now that CTCAC is competitive, if we should, not for these four, but going forward, for both staff workload as well as board sort of review time, if we could wait until, so they go hand in hand.
I think going forward, we won't have.
Yeah, okay.
That was my question too, Mr. Chair. I would move approval for item 4. I just,
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any members from the public wishing to comment? Anyone over the phone? All right, we have a motion and a second. Please call the roll. Michelle?
Gail Miller,
aye.
Anthony Sertich,
Aye.
Tia Bolton Patterson. She stepped out. Zachary Olmsted,
Aye.
Fiona Ma.
Aye. Okay, we'll hold the roll open in case Tia wants to add on. So let's move on to the next item, item 5. Discussion and consideration of an appeal if filed under TCAC regulation 10330B and if granted in its entirety a preliminary reservation of 2020 federal 4% and state low-income tax credits. This is an action item.
So there are 3 appeals that you have on the agenda. The first one, Westview Village Phase 3, was actually approved at the executive director level. So that appeal is no longer going to be heard.
Which one is that? Is that the CA 20-433?
433.
433?
Correct.
Hold on.
And then CA 2415 Page Street Studios, we put this on the agenda in anticipation of a possible appeal, which we never received. So that one we are not hearing. So we have one appeal before the committee today. It's CA 20-424, 1322 O Street. So at this time, I think we can open it up to the appellant and have him present his appeal.
All right, hold on. Let me find this 433. 433 is off, right? 424, okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Are we
Yes.
ready, Madam
We're
Chair?
ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members, for permitting us to appeal this matter. This is the Courtyard Studios project at 1322 O Street. It's a 56 unit studio project, and it's the first state excess lands proposal that the governor wanted to pursue and put in his budget message last year and again this year. We have one difficulty with this project, which is that it is made up of micro units that are about 270 square feet. So it's smaller than most studio comparable units that have been built in Sacramento over the last 20 or 30 years. Even more recent tax credit projects generally have square footages for studio units that run somewhere between 450 to 700 square feet. And so the market study requirements that are imposed on this project and every project is that you have 2-pronged tests that you must meet. The first is you must show that the actual rent for the studio unit is equal to or less than your market rate rent. It has to be 10% below the market rate rent. And we met that requirement because these units, the highest unit rent, because we have some units at 40% AMI, about $550. We have some units at 60% AMI, and then we have about 16 units or 20% of the units that are at 80% AMI. And those rents at 80% AMI to allow us to do income averaging are about $1,100. And that's the one that's causing us difficulty, because the second prong of the market study requirement is that you must show the rent per square foot in your project versus the rent per square foot on a weighted average for the comparable units, the 3 comps that you have to come up with. And we could not meet that. We came in at about $4.13 in rent per square foot because our units are so small. And the comparable units, the 3 comps we had, were at about $2.71, the best I recall. So we couldn't come in at 271. And as a result, the staff felt compelled to say that we have not complied with the rule. And my response in our appeal is that the rule simply should be excused in this case because it's an impossibility. It's an impossibility for us to comply with the rule when we're trying to do, for the first time ever, an innovative project of micro units that are going to be serving the population that needs that kind of housing, even though it's different and new from anything that we've seen before. The one comparable that we do have now that wasn't available when we did the market study in November is the Nikki Mohana project, 173 units at 19th and J, of which 52 units are micro studio units. And those units are comparable to what we're trying to do in the Courtyard Studios project, because those units were renting, the smallest units were around 270 square feet, and they were renting for $1,000 a unit, and there were just a handful of those. The other ones went up to 320 or so square feet, different sizes. Those units are generally renting for $1,500. So that square footage rent comp is higher than ours, meaning we would meet it if we could use that as the comp. But what we can't do, why I say it's impossible, is there are no other micro units that we've been able to come up with. We can't find anything with that small a square footage. And so we are asking that you, in terms of equity here, grant our appeal on the grounds that this project is innovative, it's serving the governor's purpose of using excess land, and it's new, and we can't come up with the comps, and we ask that we be excused in this one instance from being forced to comply with the comp that we simply can't meet. I have with me today Steve Hansen is here from the City Council, Wendy Saunders, who's the Executive Director of the Capital Area Development Authority, Cyrus Yosefi, who's our partner on this project and has done some 4,500 units, tax credit units, mainly throughout California. Leslie Frishy is here from the City Manager's Office because they've been assisting with the processing of this through the city. And who am I forgetting? Mary Ellen Shea is here, who did the market study, and would be happy to answer any of them. I'm sure would be happy to answer any questions you have.
So the other project you referenced was the one I went to, right? That grand opening? Right here, close to the office? Is that the one?
No. 19J, it's at the corner of 19th and J, it's a high rise, upwards, it's 11 stories tall. It's really a kind of a remarkable building because we don't really have anything that tall in Midtown.
Okay.
The one you went to was the Bellevue.
Was the Bellevue, okay.
That
Because they were small units, not micro though. Those are just normal units,
That
right?
was a rehab.
They're one bedroom.
Okay.
Right. If it's okay, I would
Yeah,
like
can
to-
you speak in the mic?
Absolutely. So Wendy Saunders, Executive Director of CTCAC, and
Just pull your mic forward.
Yeah.
Here.
okay, and developer of this project with Cyrus. And thank you. I have seen, because I've been here since 11, you guys have an overwhelming amount of work this year. So applause to the staff. I know it's a huge list. So thank you for your time today. We manage about 720 apartment units in downtown Sacramento, right around the Capitol. All of our units, 80% are either regulated affordable or affordable by design, and I say that because they are pretty much Class B and C properties. They're not fancy new apartments. They are clean. They are welcoming, but primarily they're well located, and that's the advantage of building new housing in this neighborhood, is that it's extremely well located. I mean, it's people that want to walk to work, who want to have access to public transit, who want to be able to walk to a grocery store. We have all of those amenities in downtown Sacramento, and we did a little research. There have only been 84 affordable units built in downtown Sacramento in this vicinity since 2015, and actually Cyrus produced those. So there's just a dearth of available units on the market. We get on average 200 inquiries per month. for affordable housing. Affordable, and I mean even our market rate housing, because we are the most affordable option downtown. We have 300 people on our waiting list. There's no doubt in my mind that there's a demand for this, for new units. And the thing that happened in 2019 that made all the difference to us, because we have managed this little piece of property, it's 10,000 feet, we have a little event space on it. You may have been to a party at our little venue, but it's really underused, it's really well located, but it's really tiny. When Nikki Mohan's project opened at 19th and J, we were kind of blown away because her smallest micro units at just about what we're proposing, you know, they went like hotcakes. They were the first units to lease up. She's got a waiting list for them still. They went, you know, she had an advertising campaign trying to keep them under $1,000 because she really wanted to have young people who wanted to live downtown have an affordable option. But when they're turning, they're going for 1,200, 1,300, 1,400. So, I mean, we think there's a strong market for it. So we studied her prototype really carefully. We toured a lot of projects in San Francisco, and we really, actually I have a picture. It's a really pretty project we designed. The things that we learned from our investigations and also from ULI's work is that there's some features in these designs that make them very attractive. Floor to ceiling heights, you know, ours are over 9.5 feet, glazing, you know, so you get a lot of natural light in. So we've got floor to ceiling windows. We've got cross ventilation. You've got operable windows on both sides so you can get some fresh air in. Built-in furniture so that, you know, it's flexible and multifunctional. We've got a couch that turns into a bed, a table that folds down. Fully functioning kitchens, tiny, but fully functioning, and then some really nice community spaces. So we've got a open air venue, common space on the 5th floor, community kitchen that's, I forget how large it is, but a really nice space. We've got room for a ground floor restaurant, beautiful courtyard on the outside. So kind of the upshot is we were really encouraged by that in combination with Governor Newsom's proposal for making good use of state-owned property for affordable housing. So, you know, the state, our partner DGS really encouraged us to pursue this. And so, honestly, I know y'all worked over Christmas, because so did I. Got that letter on December 27th, and you may or may not know I'm rather new to this. I wasn't aware of this threshold and the requirements, so I was pretty well floored by it. And like, Pat, what did we do wrong? But we have no doubt that these things are going to really work. The other reason we thought it was worth a shot is it's not a huge project. It's not like we're building 200 of them. It's 56. And I know we could fill them today, and I think people would be very happy living there. So I just, again, I want to thank you, and I want to really encourage your support.
Thank you. I'd like to hear from our esteemed city council member.
I wouldn't go too far. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. First of all, I just want to praise your innovation in covering the phone at just the right moment. I love your practicality, Madam Treasurer, and I want to thank the staff too. I was actually at the Lavender Courtyard site today with the mutual housing folks, and they said that it was the state tax credit that put them over the edge to be able to break ground in September. And so I don't know if you hear those stories from the projects, but it is phenomenal. And we're struggling to save SROs. We had a meeting today with our housing advocates and a bunch of other builders because the city's working on its own $100 million affordable housing bond to do gap financing. And so all these things hopefully will come together at helping the city produce enough housing. Many of you know that CADA is actually a joint powers authority between the state and the city to help preserve and protect and also to create new housing. And so the mayor sent in a letter. I felt like it was important that I come the few blocks from City Hall and talk to you because this project not only has it been elevated in press releases from the governor's office, but it truly is something that we see as a piece of our housing stock that is missing and needs to be developed. 19J, the project that was talked about, many of us didn't think the market would allow that to get out of the ground. It is type 1 construction. It is using light gauge steel to go 13 floors. And most of what we've been able to build is mid-rise type 1, or sorry, stick frame over podium. So it really was a groundbreaking project and just started to be occupied late last year. So it wasn't really available for the market study. And what I'd say is your staff, all of you work very hard. This is probably one of the most difficult problems. How do we build units? Hearing the number of units that you've been able to build and to support over the years and see that number continue to go up is music to all of our ears because we get hammered about it. But here at the cross section of so many of our transit assets close to our employment center, we could build these micro units and we just need your help. And I hope it's no disrespect, but I believe the staff were doing their best in making the recommendation to deny the application. But I think that the best public policy outcome is that we move forward and continue to get these units built by overturning that for the reasons that Pat mentioned, because we owe it to the public to show that these different kinds of units belong in our housing mix. And I don't think unless we build them that we will continue to see the market reach out and try to do it as well. So I just encourage your support for the appeal. And again, I hope that's no disrespect to the staff because we do believe you do amazing work. And I should come here more often because it's uplifting to hear what you're doing. Thanks. Thanks, Madam Chair. Thank you all.
Any other comments? I just want to say that, you know, I've lived in San Francisco over 30 years, and SROs are definitely the key component to getting folks off the street into a supportive living arrangement that's affordable. And I think that's part of the homeless crisis, is that there is nothing in between for folks anymore. The shelters are not, you know, they're not desirable. They don't want to be in a shelter, but there's no other type of micro units, small cabin communities. I mean, all the things that transitional navigation centers, but then what's next? Because other people need to move in, and then the SROs in San Francisco is kind of the next step before, you know, if they move out. But I'm very supportive of micro units like this, and I just, you know, I think we need all sorts of housing, not just traditional housing, but every type of idea. And there is a need because of the affordable housing crisis. Anyway.
I'd like to second that and say that, you know, it is very important that we build multiple types of units for multiple income levels and lifestyles, and make sure that we have housing for everybody. And I do appreciate that this is close to jobs, and the location matters a lot. We really want to incentivize that as much as possible.
Anything else?
No, I just would like to echo the support and gratitude of the due diligence of the staff. This is a huge amount of work, and we really do appreciate it, so thank you.
Okay, so I guess if there's no more comments, no motion, we move to the next item?
Oh, no.
What you're asking?
Did Mr. Sturtis, did you move?
I didn't move.
Oh,
What are you asking? What are you asking
I would
for?
move to support the appeal. Sorry, I misunderstood.
To support the appeal.
I would move to
Right.
support the appeal CA 20424 and allow the tax credit.
Second.
Could we,
Just, yeah.
so these are preliminary recommendations contingent upon bonds, and we haven't provided the additional information that we're going to on the next item, which is that we are tying the 180-day requirement to when the bond is received, which is February 12th. So all of that is part of this. And we also, as the Westview was approved by Ms. Blackwell, we would ask that this be part of this motion because it's part of this action, that both of them be approved by.
Could you,
So with that technical amendment,
I do you need me to amend my motion then? So I would move to, can I just get one point of clarification? Does the motion need to include Westview?
Yes.
Okay, so I move to approve 2 items, the appeal of 2 items, CA 20433 Westview Village Phase 3.
Sorry.
No.
The appeal on the Westview was already granted. The motion would be to approve a preliminary reservation for just Westview. And then the appeal and subsequently the.
If it's easier, we could do 2
Yeah.
motions.
Yeah, I think 2 motions is better. Because they're different projects and they're different motions, so.
So then I'm gonna move to approve the preliminary reservation for CA 20433 Westview Village Phase 3 and clarify that the 180-day clock begins after the allocation is received in February.
Okay, is there a
The
second?
allocation is received in February.
Is there a second?
I second.
Okay, let's call the roll, Michelle, just on that one.
Public comment.
But, oh, public comment, sorry, public comment. Anyone on the phone? Okay, sorry, Michelle.
Gail Miller,
Aye.
Anthony Sertich,
Aye.
Tia Boatman Patterson,
Aye.
Zachary Olmsted,
Aye.
Fiona Mall.
Aye. Okay, motion
And I-
passes. Next.
Thank you, and then, Madam Chair, I also move to approve the appeal of CA 2424 1322 O Street, with the condition that the preliminary reservation is awarded in February, and that the 180-day clock begins after the February allocation.
Right.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Public comment? Anyone on the phone? Okay, Michelle, please call the roll.
Gail Miller,
Aye.
Anthony Sertich,
Aye.
Tia Boatman Patterson,
Aye.
Zachary Olmsted,
Aye.
Fiona Mall.
Aye. Okay, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. We're on 6, right?
Hi, how you doing?
So for item number 6, these are the highest ranking 4% federal with state tax credits for all new construction. We reserved $150 million for this round, and these projects plus the projects that were just approved get us to nearly that. We don't want to go over the $150 million. That's what our regulations don't permit. But once again, these projects have met our program requirements. That's why they are on our agenda. We are asking you for a preliminary reservation of credits contingent upon a bond allocation which may or may not be received on February 12th, and clarifying that the 180-day clock will start when the bond allocation is received. Any questions?
I would move that we approve these contingent on the February 12th bond allocation.
Okay.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any members of the public wishing to make a public comment on this item? Seeing none. Anyone on the phone? Okay, Michelle, please call the roll.
Gail Miller,
Aye.
Anthony Sertich,
Aye.
Tia Boatman Patterson,
Aye.
Zachary Olmsted,
Aye.
Fiona Mall.
Aye. Okay, motion carries. Next item, item number 7.
We have 4 applications for new construction 4% federal credit and state credit that also had the KLHFA mixed income program financing, what we're calling the MIP. Our $500 million in state tax credits, we have a set aside of $200 million for MIP projects. So these are our first applications that we have reviewed. They meet program requirements. We're recommending them for approval under the same conditions that we've stated. It's contingent on bond allocation if it's received on February 12th, and the 180-day deadline will start at that time.
And just FYI, this amounts to about $69 million of the $200 million that was set aside for MIP.
I'd move approval of item number 7.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any members of the public wishing to comment? Seeing none. Anyone on the phone? Seeing none. Michelle, please call the roll.
Gail Miller,
Aye.
Anthony Sertich,
Aye.
Tia Boatman Patterson,
Aye.
Zachary Olmsted,
Aye.
Fiona Mall.
Aye. All right, motion carries. Projects are approved. Item number 8.
Item number 8, we are requesting approval of the waiting list. All of as I mentioned earlier, we ranked all of the projects that were received, so the waiting list is a group of lower ranking projects. But depending on the outcome at the CTCAC meeting in terms of their ranking in their bonds, it could be that we reach down to some of these projects on the waiting list to fund. And what we would do is we do that administratively after this, once the CTCAC meeting occurs and it's determined which projects are moving forward with the bond allocation. We will look at the projects in item number 6 and also in item number 8 and determine which are the highest ranking we're asking approval of the waiting list so that we may administratively give them reservations of credit at a later date. This is something that we do in our 9% round as well and under similar circumstances. So it's a process that we have in place, and we're asking to implement that for these 4% of state credits as well.
And so can you explain to me the wait list? How does this work? Why are they on the wait list?
We reserved 150 million in state credits, but we received applications for about 350 million in state credits, so we're oversubscribed, and we are not entirely sure that all of the projects listed under item 6 will score well enough with CTCAC to get a bond allocation, so then we would not be able to fund up to the 150 million that we reserved for January. We'd like to be able to do that, so that's why we're asking for permission to go a little bit deeper than the projects that are listed in ranking.
Okay. And it's based on a scoring system?
It's state tax credit per units. We're trying to get as many units.
Oh, per units, okay.
Yes. And I would just point out that, as has been mentioned, we have had a lot of work, and so even this past week we are finalizing reviews. So there is a goldenrod of the waiting list. There are a couple of projects that could possibly have disqualification issues that we are still looking at. So I wanted to let everyone know that we did republish this list on our website. We will work through that at the staff level. If need be, appeals will come to the committee at the next committee meeting if they're not resolved at the staff level. So that's a change from the waiting list that you originally received in your materials earlier.
I move to approve the waiting list.
Second?
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any members of the public wishing to comment on this item? Anyone on the phone?
It's okay.
My name is Luke Watkins, and I'm with Neighborhood Partners. And I have 2 projects on this list, which is awesome. But the bond allocation list from CTCAC I saw this morning for the first time. One of my projects is the bottom project on that list, which means it could get bumped by someone, because I don't know what the scores are below that, correct? Someone appeals. So, as I understand it, I don't have a chance to reapply for bonds. If I don't get bonds this time, I lose my state tax credit reservation, correct? Or do we have multiple opportunities?
Well, you said you're on the waiting list, correct?
No, I'm on the bottom of the, bottom of the, I'm on the bottom CTCAC list. So I'm the last project. So,
And where are you on the TCAC list?
well up the list, 2/3 of the way up. So, I mean, it's just difficult. It's like, this is being read as you know, first essentially have to get the tax exempt bonds, and then you get this. And effectively, do you know what I mean?
I do, and we are going to send, are you on the item, are you on our waiting list, or on?
You mean your list? No, I'm on your list to be awarded to me.
Okay, so those projects will actually receive a preliminary reservation letter. In that letter, there will be language saying the reservation is contingent on receiving a bond allocation by February 12th. So you will have something to show that you are preliminary reservation. But it's really just holding by February 12th.
Yeah, I guess
He's
my
asking what his chances are on
my
February
question is,
12th.
now I'm the last one on the tax exempt bond preliminary recommendations,
So what's his
which
chances?
means one of those projects that was just approved, or maybe, or someone else who's appealed is gonna bump above me potentially. So
let me just say, let me speak it.
even though I'm well up in this list, and that's just the unfortunate.
Yeah, and you know, it's competitive, so there are winners and there are losers,
Right.
but you could bump either direction, right? You could bump either direction because we don't know which projects are gonna appeal and not appeal, et cetera, from CTCAC yet. We can't predict.
Yeah, it's just the way it is, but but my understanding is, I mean, Pat and I were talking about this before. He was like, oh no, you get this, you can apply for tax exempt bonds in the next round. There's nothing that says you have to get tax exempt bonds in this round, but that is how you're interpreting it, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
They were joint applications,
Yeah.
so that's because of the fact that.
So that's really what I want to clarify, because
Yes.
that's just the way it is. All right, thank you.
Okay.
Madam Chair, thank you, and I appreciate your comments. So this is sort of the hypothetical that I've spent a lot of time talking about, and certainly I'm not suggesting at all that I understand this, but I just from the applicant's point of view, the way we score on both sides, because TCAC is this tiebreaker for cost containment, and CDLAC is sort of the most efficient, and you have to get the highest score. This is a little bit of what I was concerned about. So we have someone who's on the top of the TCAC list, not on the waiting list, and then we have someone at the bottom of the CDLAC list. So I sincerely understand how incredibly difficult this is and could never do what you're doing, but it is a little bit of a conundrum that I still don't fully understand how we can resolve it.
And, you know, I wish we could make everyone happy.
But I don't want to make everyone happy. I just want to
Right,
resolve
but
this.
Could we just clarify the CDLAC list? I don't think our list, if you take action on items 6 and 8, it's an exhaustive list of every project. I'm not sure the list that CDLAC produced, at least the one that I saw, was their exhaustive list. It's their highest ranking list. So I wouldn't necessarily classify your project as the last one on their exhaustive list.
You mean it's not the lowest one right now that they're willing to allocate bonds to, based on that initial list?
Well, I think their list is, we have to compare the two lists.
Right.
But they could go, as we expect, we could go a little bit into the waiting list, and they could be in a similar situation where they go a little bit below what is listed. Right. Thank you, Evan, I didn't know you were here.
Yeah, so,
and I think
I just wanted to present this to you because it's a dilemma. I also have 8 HUD 811 units in the project, which will disappear. You know, it's a joint College Bay, CDLAC, HCD program, and those are, you know, targeted towards people who are living in skilled nursing facilities now. It's a highly desirable thing to do. That will go away because those have to be occupied by September 2021. So if we don't make this, it'll disappear. And that's just the difficulty of your multiple, you know, just the difficulty of what you are.
And I think the other issue that you somewhat bring up is the timing of the reapplication, and I think is that, like, you don't know when you can reapply.
Yeah, I thought I could reapply in 2 days, but that I can't, right? Because
you can.
Yeah, you can apply.
You can.
for CDLAC, or I mean to you, yeah, right, I could reapply. I could start all over again, yeah, that's true for
Right.
both. That's right.
And I believe CDLAC provided a 1-week extension as well, so it gives you a little bit more time to communicate with TCAC and CDLAC and get a better sense of where
Yeah, that's
you
true, I
might
could
fall.
just submit the whole thing again.
Yes.
All right, thank you. But I'm not foregoing this.
No.
No.
All right, thank you for your time.
Okay, any comments? I lost track of where we are.
I
A motion and a second. Comments from the public? Anyone on the phone? Seeing none, Michelle?
Gail Miller, just one stepped away. Anthony Sertich,
Aye.
Tia Goldman Patterson,
Yes.
Zachary Olmsted,
Aye.
Fiona Ma.
Aye. All right, the waiting list is approved. Can we go back to the other one? Tia, do you want to add on to the other item? We took a vote on which one, Michelle?
Oh, what was that? That was item
Number 4.
Was it 6?
6.
Yeah, I left the call open for you.
Yes.
Was it
Aye.
six?
Was it 6?
4.
The one where she was out of the room and I asked you to
Yeah.
hold the roll open.
It was 4.
I'd like to add on to item 4. Okay.
Aye.
Yeah.
Good.
Motion passes. Item I?
Okay, those projects are approved. All right, so now let's keep the roll open on 8 until Gail gets back, and let's move on to the next item. Number 9.
All right, item 9 is establishing a minimum point requirement for all competitive applications in 2020. This is an annual exercise that we do each year. There are no changes to the 9% scoring. We did have a change to the 4% plus state credit, and the state credit we're speaking to is the original state credit, not the $500 million. We did make some changes to that competitive system, so we're adjusting that score down to 86 points and maintaining the 85% of the maximum to establish the minimum for those projects. So we are requesting approval from the committee to the minimum point scores.
I move to approve the new minimum point scores.
There's a motion
I'll second.
and a second. Any members of the public wishing to comment on this item? Anyone on the phone? Seeing none, Michelle?
Anthony Sertich,
Aye.
Tia Boatman Patterson,
Aye.
Zachary Olmsted,
Aye.
Fiona Ma.
Aye. And I'm gonna leave it open for Gail when she comes back, so item number 10.
Item number 10 is consideration by the committee of a resolution authorizing the executive director to sign interagency agreements with the state treasurer's office. So this is, again, is an annual exercise. This is mainly state treasurer's office as far as personnel, business services and stuff. We have a contract and we need committee approval to delegate authority for signing from the executive director.
One question on this.
Yes.
Is the dollar amount of 900,000 about the same as last year?
It's actually a little less, I was told. I think it was a little over $1 million, and I think it had to do with staffing and, within the treasurer's office.
Any questions, board members?
I move staff recommendation.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any members of the public wishing to comment on this item? Anyone on the phone? Okay, seeing none, Michelle?
Gail Miller,
Number 9.
Aye.
Not 9, number 10, sorry. I'm gonna have you add on 8 and 9, so we're on 10.
Okay.
Anthony Sertich,
Aye.
Tia Boatman Patterson,
Aye.
Zachary Olmsted,
Aye.
and Fiona Ma.
Aye. All right, the item is approved. Gail, do you want to add on number 8 and number 9?
Please.
Okay? You call item number 8 for
Okay.
Gail.
Recall, oh, Gail Miller.
Aye for item 8.
Okay.
Okay, number 8, the waiting list is approved. Then number 9.
Okay. Gail Miller,
Aye.
All right,
Thank
that
you.
item is approved, number 9. Okay, let's move on to number 11. Item number 11.
Okay, number 11 is a resolution to adopt our proposed opportunity area map for 2020, and we're proposing to re-adopt the 2019 map. There will be a second proposal later this year to adopt a new map, a 2020 map. We work with an outside task force to help us think through ideas with regard to the opportunity map. This year, the results came in a little bit later than usual, and our regs were passed a little bit earlier than usual. It normally travels with our regs. And so because there were some changes, and because obviously I'm new, I would prefer, my style is to make sure that we circulate changes to the housing community and make sure that there's time for commentary. So rather than just put a new map in with no one getting to see it, we want to just approve the old map so we have something to work with, and then we're going to circulate the new map and get comments, and then we'll bring that back for revision. And I'll tell you right now, the general change that's in the new map that would be coming soon is that there was a sentiment within the rural housing community that the zones that we're using for making decisions in the rural area were too large, and they wanted to use smaller size parcels, and so that's the change we'll be looking at.
For 2020. But
But
you want us
right
to
now,
adopt the 2019?
we want to adopt the old map right now, so we have something to work with until we get to vet the new one.
And then you'll bring it back later on this year?
Yes, we will.
Move to, second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any members? The public? No? Okay, on the phone? Okay, seeing none. Michelle?
Gail Miller,
Aye.
Anthony Sertich,
Aye.
Tia Boatman Patterson,
Aye.
Zachary Olmsted,
Aye.
Fiona Ma.
Aye. All right, this item is approved. So we're on item 12 now?
Public comment.
Public comment? Any members of the public wishing to comment on anything? No? How about on the phone?
I may,
Oh,
if nobody's on the phone, I
Okay,
just
sure.
want to take 1 second and thank Judith for her efforts on revisiting the $100 million that you're getting for the disaster relief and trying to figure out a way to utilize some of that money for SROs that were cut out of the program, cut out of the regulations 4 or 5 years ago. And we think there are some 12,000 SROs that were done in the early days, and many of those, the ones down here on K Street, Sequoia, that's 33 years old now, had HCD financing originally, and it needs to be redone, completely restructured and downsized to provide for studios instead of the used common bathrooms for every 10 units. And there's numerous other projects like that that need to be utilizing 9% credits because they just won't work. The 4% credits, not enough money. So thank you again for your efforts. Thank you, members.
Thank you. Thank you. Tia?
I know one of the things that we talked about earlier on the CDLAC is a set aside and a portion for preservation and tying the definition of preservation to TCAC's definition of preservation. And so I want us to keep in mind that under the existing state tax credit program that is married with either 9% tax credits or 4% bonds, that there was language in last year's trailer bill that allowed for a 95% applicable fraction for those state tax credits that are married with the 4% under the existing state tax credit program. And that was actually to get at deeply targeted affordable housing that can't carry a whole lot of debt. And so as staff is looking in the future about how much preservation we should set aside, how we define preservation, to keep in mind that there was that amount of state tax credits that were given an extra jumbo boost to go after those deeply affordable housing units.
Thank you.
Okay, any other comments? Seeing none, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.